Welcome back to Cheaters Chronicles. I see you, I appreciate you, and I'm thankful you subscribed and keep showing up. This space is built on your insights. Leave your thoughts and lessons below. Now, cue the tension, cue the truth. Let's get into it. The doorbell cut through my apartment silence and pulled me off the couch. Tuesday nights were usually quiet, and I did not expect company. I paused with the remote in my hand and listened to the second ring, then the third. A warning feeling crept in before I moved. I crossed the room, leaned into the peephole, and my stomach tightened. In the hallway light stood Danielle Harris, my wife, the woman I left 3 years ago. Her shoulders were square, her chin lifted, and her eyes held mine through the glass. The silence felt heavy. The memory stayed sharp. My jaw clenched. I considered staying quiet, but Danielle rang again, and I knew she would not quit. I unhooked the chain and opened the door crack. I asked what she wanted, and my voice came out rough. She said she needed to talk and begged me to listen. I stared at her and felt old anger move onto my ribs. I wanted to shut the door and protect the life I rebuilt, but curiosity pushed back. Danielle stood in the hallway like a decision that refused to fade. I took a breath, then stepped aside. I stayed quiet. My hands were not steady. I did not look away. I could not forget it. Quietly, I laughed once and told her the way I left should have been enough. Danielle said she never understood why I vanished, because she came home to an empty house. I told her she was pretending because she knew what happened at Tiffany Brooks's party. Danielle looked confused, like she was hearing a different story. That confusion made me angrier, not softer. I said she knew what she did and what she chose before it happened. Danielle asked to talk inside, away from the hallway. I did not answer right away. I took a breath. The silence felt heavy. My chest felt tight. I wanted details. I asked for facts. I did not trust myself. I cannot undo it. I stayed quiet. I listened anyway. She asked to come inside so we could talk without the hallway echoing. Every instinct told me to shut the door, but curiosity pushed past my pride. I stepped aside and let her enter. Her perfume hit me, and I hated that it still felt familiar. She sat on my couch as if it was not mine. I stood near the wall and waited. Danielle looked around my small living room like it proved something about me. I did not offer her comfort. I did not offer her a smile. I waited for her to start. My jaw clenched. The room felt smaller. The air felt thin. The silence felt heavy. I could not undo it. I could not breathe right. Quietly, she asked for water, and I went to the kitchen. While the tap ran, the past ran with it. I remembered coming home from work, loosening my tie, and seeing Danielle dressed up and focused on her makeup. I asked if we were going out because I did not remember planning anything. She said we had no plans because she had a date. I said the word dates back to her like it could not be real. She kept her eyes on the mirror, not on me. That detail stayed in my mind. I filled the glass and stared at my hands. My stomach tightened. The memory stayed sharp. I wanted the truth. I listened anyway. My hands were not steady. I did not trust myself. Still, quietly, Danielle said a new coworker named Derek Lawson asked her to go to Tiffany Brooks's birthday celebration. She said he did not want to attend alone, and she made it sound harmless. Tiffany's name tightened my jaw immediately. Tiffany was trouble, and Danielle knew I avoided her on purpose. I asked if Derek knew Danielle was married. Danielle shrugged and said nothing would happen. Then she said she did not want to go alone, and I would not go with her, so she was going with him. I told her I refused to step into Tiffany's house again. I told her the parties turned ugly after midnight. I asked her to stay home. I stayed quiet. I wanted details. I asked for facts. My chest felt tight. I did not interrupt. I listened anyway. Still, Danielle said I needed to accept Tiffany as part of her life because they had history. I told her my problem was not history, it was pattern. Tiffany had been divorced 4 times, and each time involved cheating. I also said Tiffany kept drugs around, and I did not want Danielle near it. Danielle called me judgmental. I pointed out what Danielle wore to Tiffany's other parties versus what she wore now. The change looked like intention, not coincidence. Danielle said I was being unfair, but she did not deny Tiffany pushed her to live a little. I told Danielle to prove me wrong by staying home. I told her a date with another man was not harmless. I said my boundary was simple. My jaw clenched. The silence felt heavy. I did not interrupt. I wanted the truth. I listened anyway. Still, for a second Danielle hesitated. Then she said Derek was counting on her. The way she said it made it sound like loyalty, not betrayal. I asked if Derek mattered more than her husband. Danielle did not answer, and that lack of an answer felt loud. I warned her that if she walked out on that date, our marriage would end. Danielle rolled her eyes and said I was being ridiculous. She said it would not hurt us and told me not to wait up. I told her goodbye, and she heard the final tone in it. Danielle paused at the door for a heartbeat and then left anyway. The door clicked shut, and the house felt different after it closed. The silence felt heavy. My stomach tightened. I did not look away. I cannot forget it. Quietly, hours passed with me moving between the couch and the window. I drank one beer and then another, trying to quiet the images in my head. I kept thinking about how Danielle had changed over the last year. Late nights, private calls, and pulling away from my touch. Tiffany's influence was always nearby in the background. Danielle used to laugh off Tiffany's jokes about cheating, but that night felt like the joke turned serious. I told myself Danielle might sit, talk, and come home early. Then I remembered the dress, the lipstick, and her eyes refusing mine in the mirror. I felt anger, then hurt, then disbelief in a loop I could not stop. I wanted details. I asked for facts. The memories stayed sharp. The silence felt heavy. I cannot undo it. I listened anyway. Still, quietly. Near midnight, my phone rang, and Tiffany's name lit the screen. I answered because I wanted to know what cruelty she was delivering. Tiffany sounded drunk and pleased with herself. She asked if she woke me up, like she did not care either way. She said my wife finally found a real man. I asked what she meant, and Tiffany told me to listen. Then I heard sex sounds through the phone and Danielle's voice pleading. My stomach dropped so fast I felt dizzy. I slammed the phone down and stood there shaking. I did not call Danielle back because I did not trust my voice. I did not drive to the party because I did not trust what I might do. I stood in my living room and stared at the floor like it could explain anything. The silence felt heavy. My chest felt tight. My hands were not steady. I did not interrupt. I wanted the truth. I listened anyway. Still, I did not cry. I started packing, fast and precise like work. I loaded my truck before sunrise with my tools, clothes, and important papers. I decided I would not live another day in that house. When the bank opened, I emptied our joint accounts, not out of greed, but out of survival. Then I went to my job and told my supervisor, Terrence Cole, I was quitting without notice. I told him why, and he did not argue. He cut my final check, helped me load my things, and wished me luck. My phone had been ringing since early morning, all calls from Danielle. I turned it off and made a plan to disappear. I did not want explanations. I wanted distance. The memories stayed sharp. Time did not fix it. I cannot forget it. Quietly, I threw the phone away outside a big box store and bought a prepaid one inside. I did not want a number she could trace. By mid-morning, I was on the highway with no destination except away. We had separate credit cards, so I left them as they were and focused on cash. I drove until my hands loosened on the wheel and the old neighborhood felt like another life. I kept moving because stopping felt like admitting I might return. Eventually, I ended up in Colorado Springs, a city where no one asked questions. I found work in my field, rented a small apartment, and built routines that stayed quiet on purpose. I dated a little, but kept everything shallow. 2 years passed in that control distance. Then one Tuesday evening, Danielle was at my door, and the distance collapsed into one ringing bell. The silence felt heavy. My stomach tightened. I wanted the truth. I listened anyway. Still, I walked back into the living room with her water and waited for her explanation. Danielle said she wanted to explain what happened at Tiffany's party and insisted it was not what I thought. I told her it looked clear. She went on a date and ended up in bed with Derek. Danielle said no, and tears filled her eyes quickly. She said she was drugged. The words hit me hard because they did not match the story I built for years. I told her to say exactly what she meant. Danielle said someone slipped something into her drink. She admitted she overdressed because Tiffany asked her to dress revealingly and make Derek think he had a chance. Danielle said she thought it was harmless, like a cruel prank, not a trap. I stayed quiet and watched her face. My chest felt tight. The room felt smaller. I wanted details. I asked for facts. I did not interrupt. I listened anyway. Still, Danielle said Derek stayed close all night, like he was guarding her. She said she danced with coworkers because people were watching. Near the end, she felt dizzy, and Tiffany led her to a spare bedroom to lie down. Danielle said she faded in and out and thought she was home in bed with me. Then she heard someone say, "Hurry up, you're next." She opened her eyes and saw Tiffany, Derek, and a coworker named Marcus Grady. She said there were other men waiting, undressed, as if it was routine. Danielle looked at me and said confusion made the assault easier. I felt sick listening, but I forced myself to keep hearing her. I wanted to reject it, but the details sounded like fear, not invention. The silence felt heavy. My stomach tightened. My hands were not steady. I wanted the truth. I listened anyway. Still, quietly. Danielle said she woke the next morning next to Kelvin Flanagan, another man from the office. Kelvin told her he never thought she would cheat on me, but he was glad she did, and he hoped to see more. Danielle slapped him, got dressed, and went to the hospital. She told the staff she believed she was given a date rape drug. Tests found traces of Rohypnol and ecstasy in her blood. The hospital called the police, and she tried calling me while she waited. Danielle said I did not answer, and she found out why when she returned home and I was gone. Hearing that made my jaw clench because it was true. I had vanished like the house was burning. Danielle said police interviewed Kelvin, and he claimed he thought she consented because that was what happened at Tiffany's parties. She said he claimed he believed she knew and agreed. My stomach tightened. The air felt thin. I wanted details. I asked for facts. I did not interrupt. I listened anyway. Still, Danielle said police pressed Derek, and he admitted Tiffany planned it. Derek claimed Tiffany believed Danielle wanted to participate and only needed a push. Danielle said Tiffany ignored one important detail. Danielle refused to do anything without her husband agreeing. Danielle said she told Tiffany that more than once, but Tiffany treated it like a challenge. I asked what Danielle did after the hospital and police report. Danielle said she broke down for 2 days, then hired an attorney. She said she sued everyone involved, including men who assaulted her. Many suits failed because those men claimed they believed it was consensual based on the party's reputation. But the cases against Tiffany and Derek were held because they conspired to drug her. Danielle said she won a settlement, though Tiffany had little money besides her house. I stayed still and tried to process it in order. The room felt smaller. The silence felt heavy. My chest felt tight. I wanted the truth. I asked for facts. I did not interrupt. I listened anyway. Still, Danielle said the court asked if she would take Tiffany's house as part of settlement. Tiffany still owed hundreds of thousands on it, but money from Derek covered the payoff. Danielle sold the house and used some of the proceeds to stabilize her life. Then she hired a private investigator. She said she did not do that for revenge. She did it to find me. Danielle said she loved me and believed we belonged together. The hope in her face made my chest feel tight, but it did not change my decision. I told her she should have hired a divorce lawyer instead. Danielle said she did not want a divorce and never did. I told her what she wanted stopped matching when she walked out for that date. Danielle said she did not cheat willingly and begged me to stop punishing her for being drugged. I told her the issue was what happened before the party. She dismissed me, chose a date with another man, and treated my boundary like a joke. I said that. Disrespect killed the marriage before the assault ever happened. I stayed quiet. I wanted details. I asked for facts. My jaw clenched. The silence felt heavy. I listened anyway. Still, Danielle insisted we could rebuild if I would let her stay and talk. I told her to listen. I did not want her back. I said I had a life now, and I was not reopening the past. Danielle asked if there was someone else, and the question hung there. Before I answered, the front door opened, and Alyssa Grant walked in with grocery bags. She was a stunning black woman with a calm smile that faltered when she saw Danielle on my couch. Alyssa asked who Danielle was. I said Danielle was my wife, and the words sounded wrong and unfinished. I introduced Alyssa, and to my surprise, Alyssa hugged Danielle warmly. Alyssa said, Thank you for sending Malcolm to me, as if Danielle had done her a favor. Danielle looked stunned and pale. Alyssa asked what we were doing for dinner, and I said I had reservations at Giovanni's. Alyssa brightened and went to change, humming, leaving Danielle staring after her. I stayed quiet. The room felt smaller. My stomach tightened. I did not interrupt. I listened anyway. Still, quietly. Danielle asked if Alyssa knew I was still married. I said she did. Danielle said I needed to tell Alyssa to stop wasting her time because Danielle was coming back. I laughed once, tired and sharp. I said Danielle could not fight for me because I would not spend time with her. Danielle said she could move here because she could not win long distance. I told her no and told her to leave. She cried and repeated that she was drugged, as if repetition could turn my decision into mercy. Danielle said she would not divorce me and that Alyssa would never marry me. I told her Alyssa was married too and in the same legal trap because her husband refused to sign. Danielle froze like she had been slapped. I told her this was not a game, it was life, and I was done arguing. Danielle stood on shaking legs and walked to the door. She said she was not going far. I told her she was already too far away in every way that mattered. She left, crying, and the door clicked shut. The silence felt heavy. My chest felt tight. I wanted the truth. I did not interrupt. I listened anyway. Still, Alyssa came back in a simple black dress and asked why I was not ready. I told her it took longer than expected to get Danielle to leave. Alyssa asked if Danielle was gone for good. I said yes, and I meant that I would not let Danielle back into my life. Alyssa smiled and said she did not intend to let me get away. We left for dinner, and I tried to keep my mind on the present, but Danielle's story kept replaying behind my eyes. The past was not asking permission anymore. It was taking space. Later that night, I sat in the bedroom while Alyssa slept and replayed the phone call, the sound of Danielle's voice, and the certainty I built from it. Danielle's explanation did not erase what I heard, but it changed what it meant. I realized I never waited for daylight, never asked for proof, and never gave Danielle a chance to tell me anything. I felt guilt, then anger at myself for leaving the way I did. Even so, I still believed her choice to go on that date was the first betrayal. The silence felt heavy. My stomach tightened. Time would not fix it. I could not undo it. I listened anyway. Still, over the next few days, I kept thinking about one detail Danielle said. She thought she was home with me. I imagined a version of that night where I answered her calls, drove to Tiffany's house, and pulled her out before anything happened. That version did not exist. The version I lived had me packing at dawn and cutting my life in half. I did not contact Danielle, and she did not return to my door. Alyssa and I continued our complicated relationship. Two people separated on paper, but committed in practice. We did not pretend it was simple. We talked about courts and signatures and the weight of unfinished marriages. The truth Danielle brought did not reset my life, but it corrected the memory that ruled me. That correction sat in my chest like something heavy I could not set down. The silence felt heavy. My hands were not steady. I wanted the truth. I asked for facts. I listened anyway. Still, weeks later I heard through an old coworker that Tiffany had moved out of state with her reputation ruined. Derek lost his job and struggled to keep one. People at the office spoke about that party differently once lawsuits and police reports became real. Danielle had changed jobs and kept to herself. None of that repaired my marriage, but it corrected the story I had been telling myself. The unbelievable truth was not that Danielle betrayed me. It was that she was harmed in a place I warned her about, and I still left without looking back. I kept expecting another knock, then hated myself for expecting it. I told Alyssa only the basics. Danielle found me, told her story, and left. Alyssa did not press, but she watched me with quiet patience, like she understood complicated endings. That understanding made the apartment feel less lonely, but it did not make it simpler. The room felt smaller. The silence felt heavy. My stomach tightened. I wanted details. I listened anyway. Still, quietly. One evening, Alyssa asked a direct question. If Danielle had been harmed, why was I still so angry? I answered with the truth I had avoided. I said my anger started before the party, before any drug, when Danielle chose to go on a date and treated my warning like noise. I said I did not want to control her, but I needed respect, and she walked out anyway. Alyssa nodded and said boundaries matter even when tragedy follows. Hearing it from someone else made my reasoning sound both solid and cruel. I also admitted something worse. I left without letting Danielle speak because I wanted a clean story. Cheating was simple, and simple stories make decisions easier. I told Alyssa I built a fortress around that simplicity for years. Danielle's visit cracked it, and now I had to live with a complicated truth. Alyssa did not excuse Danielle's choice to go, but she did not let me hide behind anger. She said I could hold two facts at once. Danielle dismissed me, and Danielle was harmed. The silence felt heavy. My chest felt tight. I stayed quiet. I wanted the truth. I listened anyway. Still, a few days later, I called Terrence Cole, my former supervisor, and asked what people remembered about that time. Terrence said Danielle had been devastated and that police had visited the office. He said rumors were wild until paperwork and attorneys arrived. Terrence said Danielle tried to reach me for weeks, then stopped, like she finally accepted I was gone. Hearing that made my chest ache in a way anger never did. It did not change my decision, but it changed the weight I carried. I thought about writing Danielle back, just one message, just an acknowledgement, but I did not. Any reply would reopen the door she still wanted open, and I could not offer that. I needed my life to keep moving forward, even if it moved with scars. Alyssa and I kept building something careful, not perfect, but honest about its limits. We talked about lawyers and paperwork without making promises we could not keep. We made dinner, paid bills, and lived in the present day by day. The silence felt heavy. The memory stayed sharp. My jaw clenched. I wanted details. I listened anyway. Still, quietly. On a Saturday morning, I saw Danielle across a parking lot outside a grocery store. She did not approach, and neither did I. She looked thinner, steadier, and tired in a way that did not ask for pity. Our eyes met for a second. Then she turned and walked to her car. That single moment said what words could not. She was still fighting for peace, not for me. I realized my greatest mistake was not leaving. It was leaving like a thief, without offering even a final sentence of closure. That night, I opened my laptop and wrote a short line to myself. I can forgive without returning. I can admit what I did wrong without undoing my life. The unbelievable truth Danielle brought was not a magic key to restart us. It was a correction to a memory that ruled me. I still believe my marriage ended the moment she chose that date, but I no longer believed she chose the assault. Those were different truths, and living with both finally felt like living in reality. The silence felt heavy. My stomach tightened. I stayed quiet. I wanted the truth. I listened anyway. Still, quietly. Months after Danielle's visit, I checked an email account I rarely used and found a message from her. It was short, careful, and plain. She wrote that she filed for legal separation, not to punish me, but to stop living in limbo. She wrote that she accepted my refusal to reconcile, even though she still loved me. Then she wrote one last line. The truth was never meant to drag me back, only to free me from a lie. I sat with that sentence for a long time. The lie was what I assumed, and the freedom was knowing. I did not feel joy. I felt a quiet settling, like a debt finally named. Danielle did not ask for money or a promise. She asked for truth to exist where silence used to live. I could respect that, even if I still could not return. The silence felt heavy. My chest felt tight. I wanted details. I asked for facts. I listened anyway. Still, Danielle's message did not fix what happened, but it changed how I carried it. For years, I told myself the story ended the night Tiffany called, and that I was justified in vanishing. Now I knew the story had continued without me, and Danielle had fought battles I never saw. I pictured her at a hospital, then in a police station, then with attorneys, alone. That image did not erase my boundary, but it removed a lie I used to stay angry at. I understood something simple and painful. I abandoned her twice, once at the door and once in the aftermath. The first abandonment was the marriage ending. The second was my refusal to know the truth. Alyssa saw me reading the email and said nothing. She let me sit with it without rescue. That quiet respect was new for me. It made me realize how much I needed to become a person who could end things without cruelty. I stayed quiet. The silence felt heavy. I wanted the truth. I listened anyway. Still, I did not answer Danielle's email. A reply would have been a thread, and threads become ropes. I could not offer her what she wanted most, a return. But I also stopped telling people she cheated on me. When the topic came up, I said my marriage ended after a terrible night, and I left, and I kept it at that. It was not a dramatic story, but it was honest. Alyssa and I met with attorneys and started filing our own paperwork slowly and carefully. We did not celebrate. We did not pretend paperwork made us righteous. We just did the work that needed doing. Sometimes I caught myself watching the hallway again, and I would stop like a bad habit. I reminded myself that Danielle did not need to chase me anymore. She needed peace. I needed to accept that peace did not require forgiveness face to face. It required the truth staying true. I stayed quiet. The room felt smaller. The air felt thin. Time did not fix it. I could not undo it. I listened anyway. Still, quietly. On another quiet evening, Alyssa asked if I regretted leaving. I told her I regretted how I left, not that I left. I said the moment Danielle chose that date, she showed me a kind of disrespect I could not build on. Alyssa nodded and said that was fair. Then she asked if I regretted not calling the police, not driving to Tiffany's, not trying to stop what happened. That question sat differently. I admitted I did not know if I could have stopped it, but I regretted not trying. I regretted choosing rage over action. I regretted deciding my pride mattered more than my wife's safety. Saying it aloud made my throat tight. Alyssa did not argue with me. She just said, "Learn from it." I realized that was the only useful instruction left. I could not rewrite that night, but I could rewrite what kind of man I was after it. I could end things without vanishing. I could make boundaries without cruelty. I stayed quiet. The silence felt heavy. My chest felt tight. I wanted the truth. I listened anyway. Still, the next week I took a drive through Colorado Springs without any destination. I passed streets that had become normal to me, and I noticed how much of my life was built around avoidance. I chose this city because it was far, because it was quiet, because it did not ask questions. That worked until Danielle asked one. Her question was not about money or blame. It was about truth. I realized the unbelievable truth she carried was heavy enough that it changed my future, even if it did not change my past. I started paying attention to small things, how I spoke when I was angry, how I ended conversations, how I treated people when I felt betrayed. I did not want to repeat the way I disappeared. I wanted to be someone who could leave a room without burning it down. That was the only kind of redemption available to me. Alyssa noticed the change and did not make a speech about it. She just held my hand longer at red lights. I stayed quiet. The air felt thin. The memories stayed sharp. I wanted details. I asked for facts. I listened anyway. Still, quietly. Sometimes I still heard Tiffany's voice in my head, the drunk laughter and the cruelty. I stopped letting it be the last word. Tiffany had tried to turn my life into entertainment, and I had let her by accepting her call as proof. I could not change what I heard, but I could change what I did with it. I began to understand how easy it was for people to believe the worst when it comes packaged as certainty. I had believed the worst because it made my decision clean. Danielle's visit made it messy, and I hated the mess. But the mess was closer to real life. Real life has harm and boundaries in the same story. Real life has consequences that last longer than anger. I learned that leaving can be necessary and still be wrong in the way it is done. I learned that truth can arrive late and still matter. That was the unbelievable part. Not that a drink was drugged, but that my certainty was incomplete. I stayed quiet. My stomach tightened. The silence felt heavy. Time would not fix it. I could not forget it. Quietly. I also learned that respect is not only what you demand, but what you give. I demanded it from Danielle, and she dismissed me. Then I dismissed her in a different way, by refusing to hear anything after the phone call. Both choices had consequences. That did not mean the choices were equal, but it meant I had work to do in myself. Alyssa and I kept moving forward, not as a fantasy, but as two adults cleaning up old paperwork and making new plans carefully. Some nights we talked about the future, and Some nights we watched television in silence. I stopped needing to fill the silence with rage. I let it exist. The past stayed behind me more often than it stepped forward. When I thought of Danielle, I no longer pictured betrayal as my only truth. I pictured a woman who made a terrible decision, then suffered a terrible harm, then fought for herself, then finally walked away from me without a chase. That was strength. I could acknowledge it without returning. I could respect it without reopening the door. I stayed quiet. The room felt smaller. The memories stayed sharp. I wanted the truth. I listened anyway. Still, I did not know where Danielle lived after that, and I did not try to find out. Knowing my own limits was part of the lesson. My life was no longer a chase scene. It was a series of choices, and I wanted them to be deliberate. When I saw couples arguing in public, I noticed how quickly people turn conflict into performance. Tiffany lived for that performance, and I had fed it by reacting exactly as she wanted. I stopped feeding it. I stopped talking about her. I stopped using her as the villain in my story, because she was not the only person shaping my choices. I was. That was uncomfortable, but it was honest. Alyssa once asked if I wanted to move again, to start even fresher. I told her no. Running was what I used to do. I wanted to stay and build. That was the point of truth. It removes the excuse to flee. Danielle's truth removed one of mine. I still had boundaries. I still had consequences. But I did not need lies to support them anymore. I stayed quiet. The silence felt heavy. My chest felt tight. I wanted details. I asked for facts. I listened anyway. Still, quietly. The day Alyssa received her own court update, she showed it to me without celebration. It was paperwork, not romance, and we treated it that way. We sat at the kitchen table, signed what needed signing, and planned the next step. That ordinary scene mattered to me because it was the opposite of Tiffany's world. No spectacle, no bait, no cruelty, just reality handled calmly. Later, while washing dishes, I thought about Danielle on my couch, asking for a future I would not give. I realized I did not hate her anymore. Hate had been easier than grief. Grief required admitting that love existed once and that it ended in a way that hurt everyone. I let that grief exist without trying to turn it into a weapon. I let myself admit one clear thing. Danielle deserved to be believed about the harm done to her, even if she did not get my marriage back. That was the smallest fairness I could still give. I cannot change the past, but I could stop mislabeling it. I stayed quiet. My stomach tightened. The silence felt heavy. I could not undo it. I could not forget it. Quietly, I did not see Danielle again after the grocery store parking lot. Maybe that was mercy for both of us. I knew she had money once, then used it to correct what happened, then used it to find me. That kind of effort would have crushed some people, but Danielle stood in my hallway and said her truth anyway. She did not threaten me. She did not blackmail me. She told me what happened and what she did afterward, then asked for a chance. I refused, and she left. That was the shape of our ending, plain and final. The unbelievable truth did not reverse time. It did not erase my boundary. It did not make Tiffany's cruelty smaller. It simply changed one sentence in my mind from "she chose to do it" to "she did not choose that part." That distinction mattered. It stopped me from telling a lie to protect my anger. It forced me to admit that leaving was not the same as being right. I could accept that and still keep my life. I could accept that and still move on. I stayed quiet. The silence felt heavy. My chest felt tight. I wanted the truth. I listened anyway. Still, quietly. One night, as Alyssa and I locked the door, she asked if I felt free. I thought about it carefully. I said freedom was not the absence of pain. It was the absence of denial. Danielle's truth removed denial. My life in Colorado Springs had been built on denial that I might be wrong about what happened. Now I did not have that denial, and it felt sharper, but also cleaner. I told Alyssa I felt more honest, not more comfortable. Alyssa nodded and said comfort comes later, if it comes at all. We went to bed, and I lay awake listening to the buildings settle, the small sounds of ordinary life. I realized ordinary life was what I wanted all along, even back in my marriage. I wanted respect, quiet, and safety. I had chased those things by running, but running only created another kind of danger. Truth gave me a way to stay still without pretending. That was what Danielle had brought to my door, a correction I did not want but needed. I stayed quiet. The room felt smaller. The air felt thin. Time did not fix it. I could not undo it. I listened anyway. Still, quietly. When people asked why my first marriage ended, I stopped giving dramatic answers. I said my wife, and I broke trust, and I left, and I kept it there. I did not use Tiffany's party as a punchline or a proof point. I did not describe sound from a phone call. I did not weaponize a woman's harm to justify a man's pride. That change felt like growth, even if it was late. Alyssa noticed the shift in how I spoke, and she trusted me more because of it. Trust in my life became less about policing and more about honesty and boundaries. I learned to say what I meant before resentment built. I learned to listen without treating listening as surrender. Those lessons were paid for in a way I would not wish on anyone, but once paid, they had to matter. I could not make the price smaller. I could only refuse to waste it. Danielle's truth was unbelievable because it demanded responsibility from me without offering me a reward. It did not offer a reunion. It offered clarity. Clarity was enough. I stayed quiet. My stomach tightened. The silence felt heavy. I wanted the truth. I listened anyway. Still, quietly. I never forgave Tiffany in any personal way because I never saw her again. But I stopped letting her live in my mind as the narrator of my life. She did not get to be the reason for every choice I made afterward. The reason was me. The reason was my boundary. The reason was my fear. The reason was my anger. Naming those reasons made them manageable. It also made my future possible. Danielle did not get my marriage back, and I did not get my old certainty back. That trade felt fair in a strange way. We both lost something. We both learned something. Danielle's final line about truth freeing me from a lie stayed with me. It reminded me that truth does not always fix, but it always clarifies. Clarification can be a form of mercy, even when it stings. I kept living, paying bills, going to work, cooking dinner, and building a relationship with Alyssa that was honest about its complicated start. I did not pretend I was a hero. I did not pretend Danielle was a villain. I let the story be what it was. A marriage that ended in disrespect, a woman harmed by a friend, and a man who ran before daylight. I stayed quiet. The silence felt heavy. My chest felt tight. I asked for facts. I listened anyway. Still, quietly. If I had to name the unbelievable truth Danielle revealed, it was this. I was right about the danger, wrong about the choice, and wrong about how I left. I saw the cliff and warned her, and she still walked toward it. But she did not choose the fall Tiffany pushed. That truth forced me to separate boundaries from blame. I could keep my boundary and still stop blaming her for what was done to her. That separation mattered. It made me less cruel in my memories. It made me more careful in my present. I did not become sentimental about the past, but I became accurate. Accuracy is not warmth, but it is respect. Danielle came to my door years later, not to rewrite my life, but to correct a lie I lived inside. She succeeded. The rest was up to me. I chose to keep moving forward with Alyssa, to finish my paperwork, to stop running, and to stop telling stories that made me feel clean at someone else's expense. The silence felt heavy. My stomach tightened. I stayed quiet. I wanted the truth. I listened anyway. Still, quietly. Today my apartment is still quiet most nights, but the quiet feels different. It is not hiding. It is just life. I keep the door locked, not because I fear Danielle, but because boundaries are normal now, not dramatic. When I think of that night, I do not rewrite it into something comforting. I remember the argument, the warning, the phone call, and the way I packed before sunrise. I remember Danielle on my couch years later, telling me the truth with shaking hands. I remember refusing her, and I remember why. Both memories can exist without one swallowing the other. That is what truth does. It makes room for the whole picture, even when the picture is painful. Danielle's revelation did not bring us back together. It brought me out of denial. It made me stop repeating a lie that suited my anger. It made me accept that leaving can be necessary and still be done wrongly. It made me change how I end things, how I listen, and how I respect people, even when I cannot stay. That is the only unbelievable truth that still matters to me. Truth arrived late, and it still changed my future. The silence felt heavy. My chest felt tight. I wanted the truth. I listened anyway. Still, quietly. If this story hits you, subscribe for more real-life betrayal and jaw-dropping twists. And share this with someone who needs to hear one message. Always get the full truth before you decide forever. The end.